Joining us now is former senior executive in the FBI Counterterrorism Division and SVP of the Soufan Group, Christopher O'Leary, and retired FBI agent and attorney Bobby Chacon. Gentlemen, welcome tonight. Thank you so much for joining. We're getting a clearer picture of the motive. He called this a wake-up call. He made clear he was looking to make a spectacle to grab the attention of Americans. What are your thoughts on just what he claimed his motive to be here? Mr. O'Leary, I'll start with you.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not surprised by it. First with the PTSD and the traumatic brain injury, we've had 20 plus years of conflict, and we have a number of individuals like the Master Sergeant who have all this scar tissue that's built up over time, and their susceptibility to something like this is increased. There's quite a bit of research done on this, so that's concerning. But the other thing, I think he was very deliberate in his actions. Whether he had a grievance against incoming President Trump or not, it was very symbolic that he was going to take a Tesla Cybertruck parked in front of the Trump hotel, but have limited scale violence to try to minimize any real destruction, because this was symbolic. It was a cry. It was, really explaining his grievance and his frustration. And terrorism, I know I put this in the political violence category and not really terrorism. It's theater. It's intended to be symbolic and to influence an audience beyond its immediate victims. And thankfully, there were no victims here.
Thankfully. Mr. Chacon, his motive, much more political than we thought, calls leadership weak, says the country is heading for collapse. Did that surprise you at all?
No, it didn't. I mean, I think a lot of soldiers returning from the Middle East feel that way. The mission there has kind of devolved into a very nebulous kind of objective. We don't really know what we're doing over there anymore. The objectives are not clear. We're still there after regime change. ISIS is now in Syria. Al-Qaeda, the Taliban is back in Afghanistan. So we really don't know after 20 years of war what we're doing in there, why we're there. And a gentleman like this, a soldier, comes back, and the ultimate frustration is he's losing friends, and he's watching friends and comrades get blown up and dislimbed and killed. And he blames it on the leadership back home because they're there doing what they're being told to do, but there's no clear mission anymore.
Christopher, we're learning more about the suspect. We know he was on approved leave per the Wall Street Journal. He was expected to go back to Germany on January 4th. He was an active duty soldier, a decorated soldier. But in his notes app, he shows a completely different ideology than the time he was serving. What do you make of that?
Well, I haven't read through all of the notes, but listen, I think he probably thought he was doing some kind of patriotic duty, which is consistent with his lifelong service to this country. This is an act of desperation, but this is not in any way like, the attacker in New Orleans who was carrying out an ISIS ideology. This was an act of political violence by somebody who has got mental scars, and he had some serious life changes, which made him susceptible to carry out an act of desperation like this. But I can't get inside of his head now, but my guess would be he thought he was doing something that was purposeful to draw attention to the wrong direction he thought this country was going in.
And Bobby, let's talk more about the spectacle that the suspect claimed. Again, Tesla Cybertruck outside Trump Hotel. Now that we see the political notes that he made, should they explore that the location choice was deliberate here, where he drove 1,000 miles to get to the Trump Hotel?
Well, certainly it was deliberate, and certainly the vehicle was deliberate. Both the location and the vehicle were deliberate. But it was also deliberate that he didn't want to hurt anybody. He wanted to make a spectacle, as Christopher said. So I think that, I would investigate, his life was gone. I would investigate others in similar situations if they feel that way. These soldiers have to start being, counseled and given the help that they need. Clearly, in some of his writings that I've seen, he shows some PTS signs, and so and the reports of a TBI are consistent with his actions. And I think that I think it was a very deliberate thing. He was going to take his own life, and he wanted in that mission of taking his own life, he didn't want it to just go quiet. He wanted to have his last kind of statement, his last urging to the nation to be heard. And now it's being heard, because here we are talking about it on national news. And so I think it was deliberate, and I think we are carrying out his kind of last wishes.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.